All right, greetings, viewers. Today I am joined by Curtis. He was involved in a shooting. A little bit of background on him. If you want to tell us about yourself.
Yeah, my name is Curtis Adams, from Texas, and that's where I worked as a peace officer for about 10 years.
All right, so just jumping right into the questions because I know that's why people are here. You were involved in a shooting where somebody died. Is that correct?
Correct. I was involved in a shooting May 19th, 2001, and the suspect that I shot was scalping his 3-year-old daughter.
Sounds pretty gruesome. Not something people would have to deal with every day.
Yeah, typically, especially when I was supposed to get off in about 40 minutes.
Of course, that's when everything always happens, right? Right at the end of shift.
That's when all the fun stuff happened.
All right, so you were dispatched to a call. You arrived at the house, and just go ahead and tell us what did you see and what happened.
Right. I was a secondary unit and was the closest as it turned out. And about 2 blocks away, I get there as quick as I can, and there's a pretty large group of people outside, kind of frantic and freaked out. And as I get there and run out of my car, I see blood all through the garage, going into the garage, into the kitchen of this house. Looked like just a horrible crime scene. And when I get in there, I see the man holding his daughter's hair with his left hand, clutching a knife in his right, and he just started refusing orders and kind of laid into her again. When he did, I felt the recoil and knew I shot somebody, but I honestly didn't know who I'd shot because I don't remember aiming. It was just all muscle memory.
So it was just kind of instinctive point shooting. Approximately how far away were you from him?
Maybe 10 feet, and I only had about a maybe a 3 foot circle because the way the kitchen was set up, there was cabinets on the ground and cabinets up above, and he had leaned over and was kind of covering her. And when I got him, I hit him in the neck and blew out the major artery here, blew out the top of I think his left lung, they said, or maybe his right, and then it took out the top of his heart and stopped just inches away from his daughter's skull, stopped in his rib cage.
So how many rounds did you actually fire?
Only one. Um, I was lining up a second shot, and thankfully, as backup was arriving, it snapped me out of it because I'd already taken the slack out of the trigger.
Okay. What firearms and ammunition were you using?
Federal Hydroshock 40 caliber Glock, full size model.
So Glock 22.
I believe it was a 22. That's correct.
Okay. So that one shot was fatal to him. So you said you were lining up the second shot. Backup started arriving.
Right. I guess by the time I realized that, thankfully, I hadn't shot the kid, and I'd gotten her out of the house and she was being worked on behind me. It was something instinctual. I just started lining up the second shot and I had him right here. And again, I'm glad I was interrupted because it interrupted my train of thought, which I have no idea what it was. Just, I was going to basically take out the threat, even though I guess technically he was no longer a threat. He laid on the ground, bleeding to death, still clutching the knife.
So I imagine that was, I mean, it kind of snapped you back to reality, but the reality you snapped back to was basically just watching a guy bleed out on the floor, which was still
Right.
traumatic enough in itself.
My partner arrived behind me, and as a cop, every time something bad happens, you immediately go to explain yourself. He just told me, just shut up, don't say anything.
Good
And
advice.
yeah, definitely. Um, we just sit there and we kept our weapons trained on him until we got some supervisors in there. And then the officers that had arrived behind us were thankfully coordinating the Life Flight helicopters, getting the ambulances en route, and taking care of all that. Because at this point, my mind was gone. I couldn't do any more critical thinking at that point. I was kind of mush.
Yeah, and that's completely understandable. You said so. We're gonna go back to the actual shooting because this is the kind of stuff that everybody wants to know about. So you didn't even know that you drew your handgun or fired or how many times you fired, nothing like that. No sights, just instinctive shoot and then cut,
Right.
and that was it.
Yeah, I drew instinctively as I exited my patrol car.
Okay.
And so I already had my block in my hands as I was making it through the garage. And I don't remember hearing the radio traffic telling me that he had a knife and he'd already cut the child. I don't remember really anything up until that point that the recoil kind of took me out of whatever stupor I was in, muscle memory type thing. And when it did, of course, I immediately panicked in my mind thinking, who the hell did I just shoot? I don't remember. I don't remember making the decision to shoot. It just, I did. When the gun came up and when I came up, I apparently had the shot and took the shot. And it's a shot I always knew I could make. Um, I'm not the best shooter, but I could drill a dime at 10 yards easy.
So you weren't one of those guys that only shot once a year for qualifications. You actually kept up
No,
with your training and practiced on your own.
definitely. From the time I was 18 on, I was around weapons from the Marine Corps into law enforcement. There might have been a 2-year gap where I was getting married and having kids and all that before I went into law enforcement. But I was the type of person that took to it real easy. I didn't have any background in firearms before the Marine Corps. So everything that I was taught well and retained that information, thankfully.
That a lot of people say muscle memory doesn't exist, but it's just a kind of a term we use for what we all know it is. So
Right. Thankfully, it's the way I kind of explained it was so much. There was so much sensory overload happening from the moment I got into the garage to the moment I shot and killed him that my brain must have just been working in automatic mode or something. My body knew what to do. My brain knew what to do. I just wasn't conscious that I was doing.
they didn't keep you as part of the conversation there.
Yeah, pretty much.
So I would imagine if the child was being cut, she was in a lot of pain and would be screaming. Obviously, when you fire guns indoors, they're very loud. Did you hear anything?
No, the auditory exclusion, which was only a term I found out about after this happened, was I didn't hear the shot go off. I just felt the recoil. If you've ever shot a weapon without any kind of hearing protection, you know how that instantly affects you. Well, when you're hypersensitive with all this input into your senses, it shuts off the auditory canal somehow to where I guess it's kind of like taking the power away from this engine to give to this engine on a plane or something similar. I guess the brain pretty much doesn't have time to power that receptor that hears that shot go off. So it shuts it off. It's quite amazing actually that our bodies can do that.
And I'm familiar with it as well. So once you snap back to reality, your hearing was perfectly fine. You could communicate with your partner. There was no ear ringing or nothing.
Definitely, it was like nothing had ever happened other than the body on the floor. I felt normal, but I was still kind of panicking because I mean I just shot somebody. It's the first time I'd done that. I don't really know what to expect, what's coming next. They got kind of crazy afterwards.
Can only imagine. And how old was the child during the incident?
It was her birthday, and she was turning 3 in 2001, and so that would make her what I think 24 now.
Okay. Did you ever have any contact with her after the incident at any point?
Right. The media really tried to push the narrative of hero cop saves girl, so they pushed this thing on us with this photo shoot to try and get her to let me hold her and stuff, and she wasn't having it. She only wanted her mama. She was in pain. She was upset. But we had a little birthday party for her at the police department after I came back to work and after she was through the worst of it. But 18 years later, or 15 years later, when she was 18, she looked me up, and I had kept a scrapbook of all the letters people had wrote from all over the world, the pictures of her that her mother gave me, the report that I wrote, report that everybody involved wrote, and just had a big scrapbook. And I would always manage to keep it and never lose it up until I sat with her. And we sat and talked for a couple hours, and she went through the entire book, and I showed her everything. And after that, the book just disappeared. So I don't know where it went.
Okay. What was her response? Did she, once she was older and obviously had time to think about it and speak with you, what I mean, was she mad at you or
Yeah, she wasn't mad at me. She was thankful, excuse me, that I was there. And like I told her, I remember seeing her dad's eyes, and they were solid black. There was no white anywhere in his eyes. So, to me, being a Christian, I'm thinking, this is some weird kind of stuff. And I just told her that wasn't your dad doing that to you. That was something that taken over him. I still don't believe that a father could do that to a child without some kind of outside influence.
so did they ever find out if he was on any drugs, alcohol, any mental illness, anything with him?
Right. Yeah, he'd had a brush with mental illness in the past, but was doing really well. No drugs, no alcohol came back on the toxicology report. So we really don't know why he did it, other than there was a little bit of an argument between her mom and her dad. They were going to take her to somewhere for her birthday, and he had it in his mind he was gonna take her, I guess, Chuck E. Cheese or something. And because he didn't get his way, he instantly flipped and became this person that could do this to a 3-year-old, his own child.
That's terrifying that somebody again could do that to their own kid, especially somebody so young and basically defenseless that looks up to you.
Right? Yeah, it's crazy. And I had kids that age, and it just I couldn't imagine ever doing anything like that to one of my children.
I think most that applies to most people, kids. So you said the media tried to do kind of like the hero thing. Did they ever did anything big ever come out of it, or they changed their tune or anything like that?
They contacted me once, and I don't remember if it was ABC or CBS or what, but they wanted to take me back to the house and give them a play-by-play um, narrative of exactly what happened, what I was thinking, what I was seeing, what was going on. And it felt very morbid for them to want to do that and put that out there. You know, they'd have been just as happy to have been there and videotaping it all happening live. And I said I wasn't comfortable doing that, but I'm more than happy to sit down with an interview. And it's like, no, we don't want to interview. We just want to go back to the house and, you know, like, and I'm thinking there's likely still a large pool of blood on the floor in that kitchen because that artery, once it hit, he bled out quick and it
Takes
covered
about
the
30 to
entire
40
floor.
seconds.
Right. And, I mean, we literally watched him take his last breath. And if you've never done that before, it's different. It's not something you really look forward to seeing every.
So you were law enforcement at the time. You didn't have to worry about, being arrested and getting read your rights and all that stuff. But did you ever have to worry about any kind of civil issues from his family? Did they ever try to sue you, or did anything ever come out of that?
In my case, I was really lucky because it was self-defense of a third person. I'm technically in Texas. I have a homicide charge on my record, but it's dismissed under justifiable reasons. So anytime I'm ever ran, that'll come up. But like you said, because I was an officer, the worst that happened to me was somebody drove me to the police department, threw me into a room, locked me in there, and said, "Take your time, write the best report you can." think about it, take all the time you need. So I was really taken care of in that sense. Plus, I had a cop insurance, TMPA at the time. So if I had to, I could just make a phone call and have a lawyer there in a heartbeat. But with all these circumstances and everything that happened, I never felt that anybody was coming after me.
Okay, well, that's good. And things have changed a lot too since then, or at least in different agencies. I know they made you write your own report. Nowadays, if somebody's involved in a shooting, they just take your gun, send you home, and somebody else has to write the report, and they talk to you in 2 to 3 days after you see the
All right.
psychiatrist.
And, I was never sent to a psychologist for almost a week, which was really detrimental for me. I could have really used talking to somebody right away. But this was 2001. We just barely got cell phones that we're using. They weren't doing things like they do now, where, like you said, they disarm you and send you straight to a shrink, which I think is wonderful. I'm 6 foot, 300 pounds. I may look like a tough guy, but my brain's just as susceptible to that kind of trauma as anybody else.
Absolutely. And it's unfortunate that incidents like yours had to happen, which kind of, I guess, paved the way to get where we are now. And I'm sorry to hear that because it sounds like you kind of went through a lot. Was there anything in particular about the incident that actually caused that, such as seeing the bloody child and the bloody mess, or just simply knowing that you killed a man, or being worried about what was going to happen next? Was there any specific thing about it that actually kind of drove home with you that made it worse?
I kind of hit on it earlier, and I've had 21 years now, or 23 years, something like that, to think about this. And this is something you do think about daily. It never goes away. I think it was some kind of sensory overload because they were saying things on the radio that I would have heard, but I don't remember hearing. So that would have put me into a heightened state. And I think that's why I immediately drew my weapon before I ever even hit the garage. Then seeing blood smeared all over the garage, walking into a place and seeing this little tiny thing with part of her scalp removed and lifted up off of her head, and her father holding her there like that. And then before I could even tell him to stop or drop the knife or anything, he goes and digs into her head again. I think it was too much too soon. By the time I got out of my car and said shots fired over the radio, one down, it was less than 60 seconds. That's too much for one person to have to deal with. Too much sensory overload for one person, I think, but nobody really knows.
And everybody responds to it differently.
Right? There's people that have told me I've shot 3 people, 15 people, whatever, and I'm fine. Well, that's great. That's you. I'm not you. I think if my life had been the one that was in danger and I was defending myself, I don't think it would have affected me near as much as it being a 3-year-old that was basically being murdered in front of me. I never had a problem with being able to shoot a person or take a life. I would have never joined the Marine Corps if I had that problem. But whenever it's in those kinds of circumstances, it does something different to you. My empathy is kind of like I went from being a big tough guy to being a lot more empathetic. And it wasn't something I had to change. It's just something one doctor said it just unlocked in your head because of this happening. Something snapped in your brain that makes you more empathetic now towards people, or as my son calls, a big soft.
Which and there's nothing wrong with that. And, people look down on men for crying or having emotions and feelings, and unfortunately, that's what's inside. That's what drives us. Everybody's different. We respond to things differently.
Right? Yeah, definitely. You try not to cry or show emotion. You're still in uniform. You're still supposed to be professional. But the moment there was a fan in the garage, and when I was waiting on all the investigators and everything to show up and start asking questions, to keep myself from crying, I stuck my face in front of that fan, and for some reason, the air blowing on me kept me from losing it until the lieutenant walked right past me, wasn't in there 5 seconds, walked out, and all he said was, "Good shoot." I lost him. tears came. And then when the DA investigator came and I had to replay every step similar to what the news media wanted me to do, I was a wreck. I couldn't stop the tears from falling. I could barely talk, kind of like now. It was just a lot to deal with in such a short amount of time. And yeah, um, I was emotional.
It affects all of us differently, man, and that's a big step for you to have to go through that over and over again. And I appreciate you sharing your story.
Hopefully, it'll help somebody else, or maybe prepare somebody going into military or law enforcement, or maybe it'll help somebody go that just went through a similar situation. Maybe it'll be something that I said that helped them deal with it, cope.
And to be honest, I think for a lot of people, the biggest thing is to understand that it's okay to have those feelings instead of, oh, I need to be a big, strong, tough guy. I carry a gun and I can fight and I shoot somebody. It's not supposed to affect me. And that's not true. And I think people need to understand that it is okay. It's okay to cry. It's okay to do whatever you need to do to get it out. It's okay to go talk to somebody because if you bottle it up and let it build up, then it can kind of manifest in different ways and create issues that you'd never think about. You know, people are worried about the barrel length for their handgun or the what grain bullet they're shooting, but they don't think about the mental and emotional impacts that something can actually have on them afterwards.
Oh, exactly. And it's not something that's taught in the academy, at least it wasn't 20 plus years ago. I went in 1997. I did get to speak to one academy class about the incident and kind of go over, this is what to expect. This is what can happen. All the emotional and the physiology behind it, things that are going to happen to you. And I really like doing that because it not only is therapeutic for me, but maybe I can prepare the next generation of officers for what's going to come, especially in today's climate. We went from a place where every 10 years we might have a shooting, and there had been 10 years exactly between the last shooting and mine, to now we're having a monthly out here. So the world is changing.
And a lot of people, their views on law enforcement are not well, and people are more likely to engage or attack or ambush, and we see it in the news all the time, and it's unfortunate.
It is. I feel for these guys, and I actually had to get off of social media almost 100%. Only have a Facebook account for the buying stuff, but I had to get away from all the negativity because the way that they're coming at law enforcement now, there's nobody that has their back, and if you try to defend them, you just get destroyed. And I couldn't deal with it anymore. I'd rather live off grid somewhere and only have animals because animals are a hell of a lot better than people.
They listen a
And
lot better.
they, well,
Well,
maybe mine don't listen, but that's okay. Um, I still like them. But yeah, I definitely prefer animals over people after 10 years in law enforcement.
I can feel you on that one. So I appreciate you again taking the time to talk about the incident. So we'll move on from that. I think I've grilled you enough and stirred up some feelings. Why don't you tell everybody what else do you have going on, or what kind of stuff are you into or doing, or is there anything that you just want to say regarding anything?
Yeah, well, I retired officially in 2007, and I tried to do the corporate world stuff, but it it was starting to become that time where all cops were bad kind of thing. So with my background, I was unhireable so much as a Walmart. So I've been involved in some nonprofit organizations. We had a computers for kids program where the school districts, whenever they change out their computers, we would get their old equipment, and I would be the IT guy that goes in, strips and saves what we can, builds the computer back up, and then we would have a giveaway for needy children that could utilize a computer for schoolwork and whatnot. And we'd have a giveaway and kind of thing like that. But then the guy that was running, a good friend of mine, Jake Landry, he got really sick, and we had to kind of postpone everything until he was better, and we just haven't ever got back to it. Otherwise, I'm just sitting here looking for something to do. So if anybody needs help shooting, want to learn how to shoot, want to learn how to defend yourself and other people, no longer certified with the NRA, but I've trained many people from not knowing how to hold a gun to being able to perfectly qualify the very next day.
If somebody was interested in that, what area are you in that they would be able to do that?
I'm south of Houston by about 40 minutes in Brazoria County. I'm in the city of Lake Jackson. So anywhere in Brazoria County or nearby, if you'll come and the only thing I ask is you cover your range time, and I'll donate my time and help you out. Not asking for money or anything.
And how would somebody get a hold of you to do that?
The easiest way would be my email. It's cadams927@gmail.com. CADAMS927@gmail.com. If you contact me there, when I reply, it'll have my cell phone number on it. We can further communicate any other way that you'd like.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate your time, and hopefully everybody else did as well. If anybody has any questions, just leave them down in the comments below, and either Curtis or I could get back to you and answer those questions for you.
Definitely, I appreciate you having me on. And sorry I got scatterbrained there. I'm sure there's a million things I could have said on top of that, but that's for the next time.
That's right. I think we all kind of have those moments as well in life. But again, thank you for your time. I greatly appreciate it.
Appreciate you, brother.